Well, hello there.
Hello there.
It's been a good few months since I've uploaded. If you'd like to skip the explanation and get straight to the video, use this timestamp. So, where have I been? Australia. And I neglected to bring my mic or transfer any video files over that I had on my desktop back home over to my laptop. So, I spent 7 months in the land down under with 2 videos on the back burner, barely started. And so I'm only making this video to hold you guys over until I get back into the swing of things, but I'll be moving around again pretty soon nearing the end of this month, so it's gonna be a bit slow for content. Regardless, I hope this will hold you over until the holidays, which has historically been when I pump out 2 or 3 videos. I promise I don't do that on purpose. Anyway, let's get into the video. Though Serious Sam is a series most well known for being an action-packed first-person shooter, there have been many occasions between main games where Sam goes off on a more self-contained, smaller adventure. And that's what we'll be talking about today. The strange world of Serious Sam indie games. After the release of classic Second Encounter in mid-2002, Croteam opened their IP to outside developers. And while some like Climax stuck with the first-person formula, but put their own spin on it, others sent Sam in a completely different direction. I'd also have to mention the now disbanded Croteam Incubator, who were responsible for some of the more modern indie titles. For further clarification, this video will be strictly about the indie series, so no Next Encounter or Serious Sam Advance. They deserve their own videos. But with that being said, in no particular order, let's hop into the strange world of Serious Sam indie games. Released in 2011 by developer Vlambeer, and yes, that's how you pronounce it, it's Dutch, Serious Sam The Random Encounter was created as a part of the Serious Sam indie series in order to promote the release of Serious Sam 3 BFE by Devolver Digital. Initially pitched as nothing more than a crude sketch, it came to the surprise of Vlambeer that the idea actually got a green light. Vlambeer's game designers Rami Ismail and Jan-Willem Nijman were both already fans of Serious Sam and eagerly accepted the chance to make a spin-off. Devolver Digital had the idea to basically copy one of Vlambeer's earlier games known as Super Crate Box, but giving it a Serious Sam twist. Super Crate Box is a game where the player has to collect crates with different weapons to fight off enemies and survive for as long as possible, all the while the enemies become faster if you let them run off the map. Vlambeer wasn't really a big fan of putting a new coat of paint over an older game, so they started brainstorming new ideas and finally ended up with a turn-based role-playing bullet hell game. The idea was to get as far from the original Serious Sam first-person formula as possible without sacrificing some of the series' core elements like the concept of dancing with the enemies. The Random Encounters visuals were worked on by artists Roy Nathan de Groot and Paul Ver. First starting with designing the world and Sam's sprite. Initially when creating other playable characters, the idea was to use Sam's sister, Serious Sammy. However, apparently they found that in the Serious Sam lore, she was already dead.
Now I have a machine gun.
In the end, they decided to go with Groovy Gregor and Wild Wyatt instead. Roy Nathan de Groot was also the person to create the cover art for the game. Apparently, right before the release, he lost the cover art file to a crash and quickly recreated and upscaled and recolored it. Upon release, the game received both middling and above average reviews, though Metacritic averaged it out to a 64 out of 100, citing fun gameplay but a short 2-hour on average runtime. Now let's take a look at the actual game itself. The game begins with Sam in a lab next to a scientist who's modeled after Fork Parker. Behind Sam is an active time lock. Sam jumps into it only to re-emerge a few seconds later saying that TFE was a bust and he didn't find Mental there. Though I don't think this first encounter follows the events of classic First Encounter for a reason we'll see near the end of the game. Now instead of finding Mental somewhere in the past like in the main game, Sam goes to look for him in the future, landing somewhere in Egypt. These maps work as the overworld. You're free to move around, but after a certain amount of movements, you start a battle with some of Mental's horde. The combat is turn-based and functions exactly like you'd expect. Whenever it's your turn, you have a few options. You can fight the enemy, after which the game lets you lock onto one direction to fire at. If you accept this, you can still move up and down while Sam is running backwards. Your turn lasts only 5 seconds though, so think strategically how you want to use your items and weapons. You can use items that you can find lying around in the game world, however that uses a turn. So for instance, if I use serious damage but I'm all on my own, then you pretty much just wasted an item. You can also swap weapons. It doesn't take a turn to swap over. Sam will just swap to whatever weapon you chose and a little bit later start firing at the last recorded angle. The encounters end whenever all enemies on screen are destroyed, however sometimes enemies will just randomly pop in the middle of an encounter. Once all enemies are defeated, you get a level up screen. You don't actually level up anything, it'll just give you new weapons or items to use in encounters or heal you back and give you armor. This is basically the entire gameplay cycle with the exception of the boss and secret encounters. We'll get to those later. Some weapons act differently or have a separate function along with dealing damage. The rocket launcher fires 3 rockets at once, letting you hit multiple enemies or one opponent for massive damage. The grenade launcher is kinda disappointing. It shoots 1 grenade after a small windup period and does okay damage. The standard revolvers function like you think they would. The minigun has lower damage but a very high fire rate. I always have at least one guy running a minigun in the team. The Raptor sniper rifle is a multi-piercing single-shot sniper with insane damage. Make sure you whip this out for larger enemies, it'll usually take care of them in one hit. The laser gun deals minor damage, but it has a pretty wide spread and pushes enemy backwards, giving you some much needed breathing room from those bigger enemies. The cannon will destroy any enemy in one hit in its path, however it takes an entire turn to wind up. I usually only use it when dealing with some bunched up biomech majors. And finally, the shotgun. It'll fire multiple times per turn and its fire radius can be adjusted, though the further you spread out the radius, the more likely you are to have one of your pellets miss. Technically not a weapon, but an item, the Serious Bomb deals massive damage over your entire screen for 5 seconds, basically wiping the slate clean. Though be aware that you can still be hit when using the Serious Bomb, ending its use early. Some overworld levels have really simple puzzles or gimmicks, but most of them are just a race to the end. Usually you'll have a boss blocking the end. They usually slowly creep up while faster mobs try and draw your fire, though once the boss is dead, the rest of the enemies automatically die as well. The next character we pick up is Groovy Gregor. How did he get here? I don't know. Is he a secret EDF operative? That's classified. Can he really schmoove it like his name suggests? We'll never know. The next 3 rooms are just a repeat of the same rhythm. Finally, you head underground and find Wild Wyatt. What is he doing here? I don't know. Is he a secret EDF operative? That's classified. Is he wild enough to be considered freaky? We'll never know. In the final boss room of the catacombs, you can see a secret teleporter in the bottom left. If you head there, you're teleported to the secret alcove in the overworld before you have an encounter with a... Yeah, initially I had no idea what these were, but after asking the right people the right questions, I actually got an answer. Later on in the video, I'll talk exactly about what the are. But all you need to know for now is that they take a lot of hits before they go down, so you're better off just strafing out of their way. When I tried to fight the final boss, I was intercepted right in front of him by a group of regular enemies, but when I beat them, the boss just kinda disappeared. It's supposed to be a Kraken boss fight, he just stays in the back revealing himself only to spew out a few electrofish. After he's dealt with, we finally head back up, revealing that it's now nighttime. However, we're not alone. Surprisingly, Ogzan 3 shows up chasing us. After we escape him, we find ourselves at a Great Pyramid. It doesn't specify that it's the Great Pyramid, so I can't be 100% on that it's the same one. Once you make it up there, it does begin to look like the final arena from the first encounter just a little bit. We have to press these buttons before Ogzan shows up, forcing us to fight him. Ogzan is massive, so only his hooves show up as he makes every step. I'm not gonna lie, as soon as we get to the pyramid section, this game has a difficulty spike. Like, I went from not needing any items to needing half of them to survive even a single encounter. Either way, after we defeat Ogzan, he starts to blow up. But before he can take Sam and his friends with them, they escape at the last seconds before the credits roll. Yeah, this game only took me like 40 minutes to beat in one sitting with a handful of area restarts in the last zone. After you beat the game, you unlock Endless Mode, which just sees you recollecting all your weapons, friends, and fighting through endless arenas. And that's the basic summary of Serious Sam the Random Encounter. After I beat the game, I decided to send an email to Vlambeer to see if I could get some more information on the game that might have been missed or maybe require a deeper insight, and to my surprise, I got an answer. So here's that email. What made you decide to utilize the Egypt setting instead of maybe the second encounter settings? I have very fond memories of playing through the first encounter co-op all the way through, and I never got my hands on the second encounter back then. So when we were thinking of doing a Serious Sam demake, it was a setting that naturally came to mind. We wanted to really lean into that fond memory. Were there any ideas to expand the game, make it longer, or have more content? As with every game, there's always ideas that end up on the cutting room floor. It's been a long time now, so I really have to dig deep. Just so you have an idea of what kind of timeline we worked out, we got asked to make the game on December 22nd, 2010. We pitched our idea January 13th, 2011, and the game launched on October 24th, 2011. That's maybe only 6 months of actual development time. So a lot of it just went really fast, and we weren't too worried about making a huge game. That's also a funny story. When Devolver Digital approached us, we didn't trust them at all. Indies back then were very wary of publishers, and we thought they just wanted a quick Super Crate box asset flip. The whole let's make Serious Sam a turn-based RPG was almost a bluff. Like, what's the weirdest concept we can come up with here? They'll probably reject it and we'll go on with our lives. But we pitched it and they said yes right away. Were there any levels, secrets, bosses, player characters, enemies, or weapons that ended up being scrapped? I think originally we thought there could be more characters based on the multiplayer skins in Serious Sam, but in the end we decided to go with just a playable 3. The Vlambeer wiki states that there are plans to return to old games to expand them. Is this true? If so, are there plans to return to Serious Sam the Random Encounter? I'll be honest with you, the Random Encounter was a really fun experiment. I think we did a good job for such a young studio with such a short time frame, but looking back at it, there are bits about the gameplay that don't quite hold up. I think I'd rather focus on making new games for the future, and keep this as something from the past to be proud of. What made you decide to use Ogzan 3 as the game's final boss instead of an original boss? It just felt like such an iconic boss fight. We really wanted to capture that Serious Sam feeling of having huge enemies, so making the player fight what is basically just a big leg seemed really funny and perfect. We did have a brand new original boss with Tentaculus, an underwater boss in the second area. How smooth or bumpy was the development of Serious Sam the Random Encounter? I think a bit of both. I think we were doing multiple projects at the time, also starting on Lufttrousers, so I definitely remember feeling a lot of pressure towards the end. That being said, creatively the team worked super well and it was a straightforward production from start to end. Looking back on the game, what would you have changed or done differently? The game intentionally goes very light on the RPG stuff, without any kind of experience bars or special skills or real character progression. At the same time, I don't think I was good enough of a designer back then to completely pull off such a minimalist system. It seems like there's a lot of potential there to make the game more fun and interesting. Also, the game is kinda notorious for having a huge difficulty spike towards the end. If we would have had more time, we could have playtested more and probably ironed that out a bit. Likely a simple answer, but I'm a sucker for secrets and lore. What exactly are the enemies? That's the Vlambeer, a burning bear and also our company logo. And with those questions answered, that's all I have on Serious Sam the Random Encounter. On to the next game. If I were to be honest, I think Serious Sam Double D XXL is more fitting of the title of a random encounter, because if you've ever played this to completion, the words, "I miss the person I was before playing this," and "I'd like to bleach my eyes out," are probably pretty common to you. Serious Sam Double D XXL is a 2013 updated version of 2011's Serious Sam Double D, created by developer Mommy's Best Games, or MBG for short, as part of the indie promotion before the release of Serious Sam 3 BFE. Double D is a side-scroller shooter with a very interesting gimmick, the gun stacker mechanic, which lets you stack up to 6 guns on top of each other, and each gun also has multiple variants, so the mixing and matching is core to the game. To give some background, Devolver Digital gave a very specific request to MBG, which would be to make Serious Sam Double D like Contra. On acid. Well, they definitely succeeded. Double D was modeled after MBG's first game, Weapon of Choice, which is pretty much the same as how I described Double D to be. On a side note, MBG's designer is a man named Nathan Fouts, and he, apparently according to Wikipedia, used to work for Insomniac Games. Yeah, that Insomniac Games. The one that gave us the world's greatest Spider-Man games. I just thought that was interesting. Reception on launch was mixed at best. Metacritic averages it out to 66 on PC and 68 on Xbox. The gun stacker mechanic was universally loved, but the concerns were shown regarding a lack of depth in gameplay and a mixed reaction to writing, sound and level design, and visuals. But I think the visuals are more of an acquired taste, kind of like an identifier of MBG's work. Before I go into Double D, know that when I refer to Double D, I mean Double D XXL, since it's the most updated version. You can still play the original Double D by launching it from the Double D XXL executable. Alright, let's get into this. Double D starts us off by teleporting Sam back into the middle of Egypt. The exact chronology of Double D is unknown, however, at first, through dialogue, we're led to believe that this game takes place after Sam is beat Mental. So with no Mental, it leaves his forces in the hands of this guy, General Maxilla, not to be confused with his brother, the traitor. Anyway, according to Natrixa, strange crystal beacons have been detected in different time periods and they seem to be the new source of Mental's minions, so it's our job to find them and destroy them. Like most of the mainline games, Double D is littered with secrets, mostly hidden platforms and parkour secrets, but you'll occasionally come across some really strange stuff. Like I said earlier, the first time period is Ancient Egypt again. The first level takes place outside and sees you creating your first gun stack. Whenever you collect a new weapon, you get shown all of its evolutions. Yes, the 12-gauge shotgun is the natural predecessor to the cannon. There's 3 different types of levels in Double D. First are the standard open area levels like the first level. Second are the underground sections, and unlike the game Double D is promoting, the underground sections aren't complete dog water. Now, I still believe this game works best by using open areas and lots of enemies, but they managed to make the underground sections more bearable by focusing more on platforming and puzzles rather than the now more restrictive combat. And third are vehicle sections, where all you do is race to the end as fast as possible. These sections don't exist in the standard Double D, only on XXL. They were created in response to players complaining of monotony and burnout, so it's there to break up the pace a bit. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Double D has some new enemies and some of them are just female versions of existing enemies. Now, visually, I don't agree that all of them work best in a Serious Sam game, but none of them are that transgressive. Okay, maybe like one of them. Throughout the levels you can collect cash and bring it to the trader. From there you can unlock different versions of your existing weapons. This can range from changing the size of the projectile or assisting you with traversal. My favorite is the air buffer for the machine pistol. The machine pistol is your starter weapon, so it's already pretty weak, so why not just have it help me with platforming by letting me glide over most sections. Speaking of platforming, sometimes you may get stuck in an area with no way out, except for up. This is where another new mechanic comes into play, enemy stacking. Originally inspired by the First Encounter HD's cover art, featuring Sam standing on a pile of aliens, enemy stacking allows for dead enemies to be stacked one on top of the other. And unlike the main series, aliens in Double D don't turn to ash or teleport to Lumbridge Castle. They simply remain on screen and serve as a platform for the players. Something I do think that this game does well is the size comparison between Sam and other enemies, specifically the biomechs. Realistically, these guys are about as tall as a small building, but you don't really take their size into account when playing any first-person Serious Sam game, so it's nice to see their size in Double D. Size. Double D. Get it? No, okay, I'll kill myself.
Oh my god! Oh jeez! Oh my god! Oh jeez!
There's only one more mechanic that I'd like to talk about in this first section, and that is the time slow ability, mostly used for platforming and not much else, though it does make for some interesting sections in later levels. This guy is the first end of era boss, the Chimp UT Battlemaster. I don't know why he's referred to as a chimp since he's clearly a gorilla. Anyway, he'll fire at you with lasers, saw blades, and banana grenades. After you beat this guy, one of those crystals will show up and destroying it will clue in the tricks to the location of the next one, which is apparently somewhere in the Jurassic era. So let's not waste any time and head over there. Now a couple of million years in the past, we land in what would become Nova Scotia, Canada, and as expected, we have dinosaurs. These are the Therizinosaurus. Who comes up with these names? And they're generally friendly to the player unless provoked by you or other enemies. But the same can't be said for some other dinos like the Spinosaurus. Pterodactyls are cool though. Not too far from the start, you'll start coming across some armored variants of normal Serious Sam enemies. Best way to deal with these guys is to just use your rocket launcher on them. There's something cool here in the background. You can see a bunch of massive Jurassic gnars lining the walls of this cave. It has absolutely no bearing on the rest of the game or a story, it's just a nice detail. Okay, I lied, there are a few bad pterodactyls armed with anti-armor weaponry, but the few bad apples don't really spoil the bunch in this case. He's a pretty easy first boss fight, and if you have the health to spare, you can even hop on his back and get really close to do massive damage. Wouldn't recommend it though, since you'll get hit by every single one of his rockets. The next level is going to be our vehicle section, riding atop the pterodactyl. You can avoid most of the enemies and just use the rockets to remove any debris in your way. This little red pad that you see me throwing down is a jump pad. It gets added to your arsenal during this episode, and it's exactly what you'd expect. You can only throw down one, but you'll bounce up a considerable distance. Nearing the end of the next level, we have a second boss fight, this time against a female biomech major. She's just a beefed up major, nothing too important to note. When she dies, she does drop one of those crystal beacons though. Natrixa notes that it seems freshly installed and says it couldn't have been done by Mental since Sam already killed him. However, it seems her memory banks of the event have been wiped clean, so what exactly transpired is unknown. We don't quite move on to the next era just yet, so we continue through the Jurassic era and head underground, revealing a hidden underground base. Something you'll see a lot of here is the time slow ability to platform through a bunch of firing missile silos. Finally emerging from the underground, we see these weird hamster tubes. Huh, who would have guessed? So this furball is the second end of era boss. He'll try to crush you with his hamster wheel, but after you deal enough damage, he'll get off and start moving through the tubes. He'll mostly stick to using his tongue to hurt the player, but he really isn't that big of a threat. After beating the class hamster, another beacon is revealed. So we destroy it, and Natrixa lets us know that the last beacon is somewhere that, in hindsight, isn't too unfamiliar to us. Welcome to Pompeii in 79 AD, not too long before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. What is there really to say at this point? The only new thing introduced in this era are the caterpillar enemy and... Oh hell no, get that shit out of here, dude. I hate spiders. Like really, I hate them. Anyway, same as before, we start above ground and then go below to what looks like a cavern connected to Mount Vesuvius. It looks like General Maxilla is using that contraption in the background to do something with the volcano. And that thing is, as you'd expect, to make the volcano go off. Thankfully, I have this native giant flea to keep me safe. Oh yeah, I can't forget my dynamite-laden unicycle vehicle section. What the hell even is this game anymore? If it wasn't clear already, General Maxilla is the big bad of Double D, but I have to make sure to remind you because not even Sam knew that. On a real note, the character of General Maxilla is pretty basic when it comes to motivations, however he does have some charisma which can be seen between levels where he'll interview different aliens, mostly ending awkwardly.
Kamikaze squad leader.
I think he, exploded, sir!
Damn it, that's the third one today.
We do eventually catch up with him, but it's not him that we directly fight, but rather his ultimate weapon, the Double Diva. She has a hard time reaching the player if they're on a higher elevation, so this fight shouldn't be so difficult either. With the Double Diva dead, we destroy the last crystal. Sam doesn't mention it, but the reason why Nettie can't remember the fight against Mental is because Sam took a vacation and never fought Mental in the first place. He took a vacation and turned her off. He's been lying this whole time. Regardless of that revelation, credits roll and we fight until the end of the game. And then we gotta do it all again with Huff. Wait, who the hell is Huff? If you go back to the trailers for Double D, you'll see this character. This is Dan Huffington. He goes by Huff. After beating the campaigns, you unlock serious difficulty and Dan as a playable character. The campaign remains the same, but Dan has his own unique voice lines. It's novelty more than anything. Throughout the campaign, you may have found these MBG cookies lying around. Collecting them unlocks challenge arenas for you completionists. I'm not too interested in them myself. But with that being covered, that is all there is to Serious Sam Double D. On to the next game. Oh boy, right into enemy territory with this one. Phone games. The one and only Serious Sam phone game, unless you count the phone ports of the classic first and second encounter. Serious Sam Kamikaze Attack is the third and final installment of the 3VFE promotion series, released in 2011 for Android and iOS by B-Rad Games. Kamikaze Attack is actually B-Rad's second game released after Lame Castle. Devolver Digital approached B-Rad after seeing Lame Castle and offered to let them make a Serious Sam indie game. According to B-Rad, this would be a no-brainer. Given the experience with Lame Castle, Serious Sam Kamikaze Attack would follow in a similar vein, that of a side-scrolling auto-runner. The premise is pretty simple. Instead of playing as Sam, we play as a kamikaze instead. Call this the Assassin's Creed Rogue of Serious Sam. Sam is trying to run from you all while dropping explosives, firing rockets, and moving through obstacles. As the kamikaze, it's your job to kill Sam and avoid getting blown up by either dodging or deflecting Sam's projectiles. To close the gap between you and Sam, you need to activate your rage meter. However, if you let it fill completely, you'll prematurely explode and slow down again. There's also secondary objectives that'll give you bonus points. There's 40 levels between two areas, the desert and the jungle. The further you get in these levels, the faster and more difficult Sam becomes to deal with. There's a rhythm to it though. This rhythm is split between 5 levels at a time. The first level sees you destroying obstacles. The second sees you punting this poor frog. The third level has you deflecting rockets. The red ones explode when you kick them, but the green ones are returned to sender. The fourth is the same but with serious bombs. And finally, the fifth level requires you to blow Sam up with rockets, grenades, and serious bombs before you can close the distance. Do this ad nauseum 40 times. And that's basically the entire gameplay loop. The game was given middling reviews with a 67. I swear if I see anybody in the comments making fun of that number, I will find you. With a 67 on Metacritic, praising the hand-drawn art style of the game. Truly, this is the Cuphead of Serious Sam. Though the game was canned for its repetitive nature and lack of appeal to non-Serious Sam fans. But what did you expect from a phone game? After its release, B-Rad found out that about 70% of all players that played Kamikaze Attack did it through a pirate website. That 99-cent price tag must just be too much for some people, I guess. Eventually, Kamikaze Attack was pulled from the app stores and moved to PC in 2012. Currently, it sits at Steam at $3! I have nothing more to say. That concludes the 3BFE Indie Promotion Series. Serious Sam the Greek Encounter is a bit of an oddity, mostly because there's just so little information available. The only thing you can really find is the Serious Sam fandom page, and even that has remarkably little information on the development of the Greek Encounter. So to remedy this, I emailed the developer, Eric Ruth Games, but so far I haven't heard anything back. I'm not really expecting any response though, considering the last update to their website was back in 2011 by the looks of it. If I do end up getting a response during the development of this video, I'll cut back to it, but for now, the best I can do is give you the most detailed description I can. Serious Sam the Greek Encounter is a 2012 top-down shooter developed by Eric Ruth Games and published by Devolver Digital. While the game looks like a Flash game, I couldn't find any presence of it on Flash. But according to the description of this gameplay video by Marfitimus Blackamus, oh hi Frame, it was available for 99 cents on a site called Detour, but after looking through the site, I don't find it available there either. This is the part where I show you how to get the game, but apparently YouTube doesn't like that and they took down my video, so here, have this cat picture instead. Really giving the Flash vibes with this one. The Greek Encounter, if you'll believe it, takes place in ancient Greece. What exactly Sam is doing there isn't explained, but who really cares? The premise is simple. You start out by jumping out of a teleporter and you need to find your way to another teleporter somewhere around the map, all while collecting ammo, weapons, and health. The mechanics when it comes down to the weapons are a little different this time around, as it looks like Sam's interdimensional pockets don't seem to be working, because there's no weapon swapping. If you pick up a weapon, you're stuck with it until you pick up a new one. Ammo was also given in abundance, so I'd be surprised if you ever ran out. And there's no need to worry about ammo when swapping weapons either, because the ammo counter is universal for all weapons. The Greek Encounter does offer a few new things like new enemies and new weapons. The slug is the weakest enemy, sharing some characteristics with the exotech larvae. Another enemy is simply known as the Statue, being a pretty obvious nod to the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who. There's 3 stages total, and at the end of each stage is a completely original boss. The first boss is the Tyrannosaurus, likely being inspired by Serious Sam 2's T-Mech, even shooting rockets like the T-Mech. The second boss is a biotank, which just looks like some alien lifeform on wheels. I was gonna make a comparison to the Bull Soldiers from Serious Sam 2, but they look more like a spider mastermind on wheels. The final boss, known as the Giant, is a massive purple creature with a saw blade on its back. If the player gets too close, it'll stop moving and start slinging the blade around, but he can also occasionally breathe fire on the player. The only new weapon is the Shocker, which would later be adapted into Serious Sam Tormental as a support weapon. Like the name suggests, the Shocker is an electricity-based weapon that sports extremely high damage, though if you ask me, the flamethrower is still the best choice in the entire arsenal. According to some Steam discussion pages, the Greek Encounter was received pretty poorly at a 2 out of 5, citing it to be boring and flat, and might I add, very repetitive music. And ModDB seems to agree with that sentiment. If you'd like to download and try the game yourself, I'll link the download in the description. Even though the Greek Encounter is now seemingly extremely obscure, I think it's important to remember it because the idea of a top-down Serious Sam game would end up becoming the basis for literally all other remaining indie games. And the idea of the Greek encounter and its mechanics aren't horrible. Later that year, we got Hotline Miami. Imagine Serious Sam the Greek encounter with a Hotline Miami budget. So if the execution was done right, maybe this would have been a pretty solid Serious Sam indie title. To my utter surprise, I got a response, and it spared absolutely no detail. I expect a wiki page to be made and the fandom page to be updated. Here's the email. What was the development of the Greek encounter like? Easy, difficult, hampered in any way? Development length, relationship during development with Devolver Digital, timelines and deadlines? Development of the Greek encounter was very fast. I had stumbled into the indie promo game sequence for the upcoming Serious Sam game pretty late in the dev cycle, so I only had about a month to go from concept to completion on that project. And honestly, I only got that gig because the head of Devolver Digital, Nigel Lowry, and I had struck up a friendship following a specific moment in my career. See, I had made a series of NES-styled fan game D-makes I called the Pixel Force series, which included Halo, DJ Hero, and Left 4 Dead. And I had recently, at the time, received a cease and desist from Sony about my chiptune mashups of a number of tracks. Now, as a completely broke indie game developer just putting together some fan work, I was unable to afford any licensing fees, particularly the typical ones associated with such a large studio. And so I asked that I could keep the game running online because it quite literally was doing no harm to them legally or financially. After all, a free fan game wasn't exactly pulling sales away from the original project, you know? Anyway, they said no and told me to take it down. So in a moment of fun backlash, I told them to go f*** themselves. Exact wording. In defiance, and posted the studio and I's email correspondence online so other people could see them being unreasonable. This post was seen by Nigel and he went out of his way to contact me and tell me that I was his hero for telling Sony to f*** off. This was the beginning of our discussion/work, relationship/friendship. At this point, he learned I was a financially struggling indie developer and he used some of his power to throw me a bone, especially since he liked my work. He offered me a spot to create an indie game about Serious Sam as part of a publicity stunt. I agreed, of course, but it was already pretty late into the development cycle and the official game was nearing completion. Nigel also wanted my game to be different from the slew of other ones that were coming out, so I had to come up with and pitch a genre/idea that he liked. The problem was, all my ideas were already being done by other developers, side-scrollers, RPGs. Basically, I didn't have much left in terms of available genres and time to work with. So I picked something that was relatively easy to output in a tiny development window. This is why I settled on the top-down action game that Serious Sam the Greek Encounter would become. Nigel and Devolver were cool about everything the whole way through, and I got my payday for it. Plus, a free copy of the new Serious Sam game. Anyway, the game itself is something I consider to be one of my worst projects that was ever released. Between the short dev time and the genres I wanted to make already being picked and still being new at coding, and using an old version of Game Maker before the studio version, this project isn't exactly one of my favorites. The original project files are all lost to time, and I'm not exactly shedding any tears over that fact. What made you decide to pick the ancient Greek aesthetic as opposed to retreading tried and true locations like Egypt or any of the second encounter episodes? I was intending on doing Egypt, but if I remember correctly, Nigel suggested the Greek idea and I ran with it. I don't know that there was any additional thought behind the decision outside of different than the other projects, but I could be wrong. Again, it was a decision I didn't make myself. Did you have any inspirations outside of the Serious Sam franchise to make the game as it is? No, not really, no. I'm not even a fan of a lot of top-down games because the visuals in those games tend to be overwhelming. Most imagery is at its least interesting aesthetically when viewed directly from the top, so to me those kind of projects end up missing a lot of graphical charm. That's why a lot of top-down games are actually done in a 3/4 view and not directly overhead. Any major things left on the cutting room floor? Levels, weapons, general concepts? For the things to be left on the cutting room floor, I would just have to say a longer dev cycle, so no, pretty much everything made it as is. Is there anything you'd change about the Greek Encounter looking back at it now? Would I change anything about it? As in if I remade it now? Absolutely. As stated above, I consider this to be, if not, my most weakest game project. Honestly, if the game still had to be a top-down shooter, I would change the view to 3/4 view and spend more time turning it into a bullet hell shooter. After all, chaos is what Serious Sam is known for. And I think that's a better genre for a game like that than an ever-growing parade of enemy spawns. I would also have to use a different engine. Unity maybe? And I would have tackled stage design a lot differently. I don't think the maze-like structure while finding exit portals really lends itself to the potential fun factor in a game like that. However, if I had a chance to do a whole new Serious Sam game from scratch, I would have gone in a completely different direction. It would have been fun to make a Contra-like out of the franchise. Did you create everything regarding the Greek encounter yourself? Sprites, cover art, and music? I created everything myself as far as I recall, but my brain is fuzzy on some of that. I do remember hand drawing and scanning the title image of Sam in the toga. I didn't have a Wacom tablet at that point. And I definitely remember the tiling and sprite work. The music might have come directly from the original games though. Again, sorry, it's been a long time. What got you into Serious Sam and the idea of making a Serious Sam spin-off yourself? Good question, though I answered a lot of this in my first question. In regards to liking Serious Sam as a franchise, I always thought it was the better Duke Nukem, but I wasn't really much of an FPS fan at the time. I think the first FPS I ever loved was Halo, and it wouldn't be until Team Fortress 2 where I really started enjoying it thoroughly. To this day, I still play Gunfire Reborn, a FPS roguelike, and Overwatch with some degree of regularity. All this to say that while I liked it at the time, I was never a die-hard fan of anything and ultimately only worked on projects as an opportunity. However, I did very much enjoy the new game when it came out, and I do respect the franchise and its history as a whole. Is there any other miscellaneous information regarding anything during the development or something personal or of any other nature that you'd want the people to know about the Greek encounter? See, I wish I had more interesting stories or ideas to tell you, but the reality is that it was a project I did over a decade ago with an incredibly rushed timeline that left little in the way of additional information or tales of interest. It's kind of a miracle it exists at all, honestly. I would go on to do a personal project for Nigel after that, and he and I would work together again, but it wasn't Serious Sam related. However, he was an awesome guy, and I'll never forget what he did for me. We don't really talk anymore, but I always think well of him, and I wish him the best. And that is all that was in the email. Now, off script really quick. Eric, if you're listening, thank you so much for telling Sony to piss off. That is so cool. I'm not gonna lie, because obviously a lot of people hate Sony even nowadays, but you were throwing hands with Sony way before this whole refusing to bring Bloodborne to PC and withholding other types of games thing came around with Sony. You are... That was awesome. I love it. Alright, on to the next game. 5 years. That's how long it took before we got a new Serious Sam indie game. This time handed to the Swedish indie developer Crackshell. If this style looks familiar to you, you may have come across their earlier game Hammerwatch, or its 2025 sequel, Hammerwatch 2. In between those two games, there is 2017's Serious Sam's Bogus Detour, a twin-stick pixel shooter with light RPG mechanics. The way this idea came about is quite strange, as it all started with an Easter egg in the first Hammerwatch game where they added a secret Kamikaze. After that though, through communication between Crackshell and Roman Rubarik, Crackshell got permission to make their own Serious Sam game. Initially they were going to publish it themselves, but later got Devolver Digital to do it. The game was formally announced in April of 2017 and released later that June. And for the first time in Serious Sam indie history, Bogus Detour broke the rating ceiling cap from the slums of the 60s to 76. Critics praised the translation from the classic Serious Sam titles to this top-down shooter, as well as the graphics and the music, which was created by the legend himself, Damian. The only thing that I got a mixed response for was the progression system, and we'll get into that later because I have my own hat to throw in the ring for it. Despite the generally positive reviews, it was considered a commercial failure as it did not recoup its development costs by the end of that year. Subsequently, a free version was created in 2018 to entice players to support the original project, to very little success. Despite that, rankings of the indie series do place Bogus Detour pretty high as one of the better games, and I'd have to agree for a myriad of reasons, but those are best saved for when we actually dive into it in a minute. I do want to go over some interesting things that I found out that are not related, but I just thought they were cool. Crackshell was founded by a former Overkill software developer, meaning, yeah, the Overkill, the ones that gave us the juggernaut that was Payday 2. Dude, I have like nearly 2,000 hours on that game. Oh, and there's, Payday 3, I guess. Just kidding, I like that one too. But that's enough rambling outside of the subject. Let's take a look at Serious Sam's Bogus Detour. Bogus Detour starts by immediately breaking my immersion by showing that the events of this game are in fact taking place within a video game within Bogus Detour, being played by an orc. Oh yeah, orcs are back from Serious Sam 2. They're actually the main antagonists, but they get very little characterization. This is the world map, looking very nice and animated actually. Unlike other maps, you don't actually get to select your mission from here, it only shows where you're currently at, kind of like the classic Doom world maps if you remember those. Speaking of Doom, Knee Deep in the Sand is obviously a reference to Doom's first chapter, Knee Deep in the Dead. Pick and Continue immediately shows us the continuity that this game takes place in. We are currently in Metropolis, about to grab the sign of Amun-Ra just like in the first encounter. Though instead of heading straight to the Alley of the Sphinxes, Natrixa gets some strange readings of elevated alien activity near the city of Alexandria. You know, the place that had that lighthouse that went... And that library with countless scrolls filled with knowledge that if destroyed would have probably sent us back a few hundred years? Yeah, that place. Well, Natrixa is asking Sam to go check it out, and why not? It's just a little detour. We start off with two weapons, a pair of pistols and these hands. That stone wall is getting the 1-2 combo. Eventually, we do get a shotgun after a small fight with some marsh hoppers, and we get that title drop.
Now, let's start this adventure for real.
Nice. Heading outside, we can find... crab.
Money, money, money.
Besides some crustacean elimination, we find... is that the laser gun?
Laser cannon. I don't know what slow light is, but I know it's powerful.
Slow light is when a pulse of light propagates through a medium at a significantly reduced speed, much lower than its normal speed in a vacuum. This phenomenon occurs when light interacts with the properties of the medium, causing a delay in its transmission. Slow light is achieved through interactions with specific materials or electromagnetic fields and has a potential application for buffering, optical memories, and data processing. Sorry. What we're really doing here is a key gameplay element you'll see in every level in this game. I was being serious. Key. We're keycard hunting. Specifically, this red one. Luckily, this heavy orc gunner is kindly displaying it above his head. After we kill him, we're notified that we've leveled up. This is where the RPG mechanics come into play. This yellow bar you see is your level tracker. When it fills up, you receive a star. These stars can be used in the upgrade menu where you can choose between combat, survival, and weapon-based upgrades. Combat focuses on giving the player a tighter weapon spread, more damage, and minor status effects. Survival focuses on speed, armor, health, ammo, and dodging. Yes, this game has dodging, specifically a dodge roll. It's just like Dark Souls.
What did he do to make them niggas that mad?
These little green squares are the amount of rolls that you can perform. They regenerate pretty quickly, so you'll generally never find yourself without them in a combat scenario. Outside of combat scenarios, though. Finally is weaponry, which gives your weapon special abilities like ricochet, better penetration, or leaving behind flashbangs when rolling. Now with the red keycard, we can see what's behind that door. Those are people. Humans. You know, like the ones that Mental wiped out during the events of the first encounter? Why they're here isn't known, but they're not very smart. Mental's forces have some new tech. These are teleportation stations. It just locks down a location where enemies can spawn in from. They're not really even that big of a threat since it takes a while to spawn in a single alien. Power-ups return in Bogus Detour, and we got 5 in total. Serious Shield, Serious Damage, Serious Business, Serious Haste, and Serious Regeneration. Shield and Damage worked as you expect. Business doubles your EXP value of killed enemies. Haste is just Serious Speed, and Regeneration regens your HP. You'll usually find at least one of these in each level, and you'll need it too considering the enemies tend to swarm you the instant they see you. Not properly preparing or positioning yourself is sure to end with death. But death isn't the end in this game, because we have our very own life system, counted in sunglasses. Unlike in Serious Sam Xbox, you don't get extra lives by racking up points, you simply find sunglasses around the world. The upgrade screen does have an upgrade that gives you a +1 at the start of every level. Oh, I don't know what these floors are called, but they reverse your inputs. These sections are one of the very few gimmick sections that Bogus Detour has. They're not too intrusive, but I have lost a pair of sunglasses to them before. Well, off to Alexandria. And that's a cannon. Weapon progression matches the enemies encountered, but it's just not really what I expected. We have an important objective here, to find a ship to sail to Greece. Apparently, somewhere on Mount Olympus is a portal that'll take us to the source of this increased alien activity. The problem is, the harbor is closed and the keycard is guarded by one of Mental's generals. But before we do any of that, we have to go and visit an old friend.
Hey Sam, come get some.
See you later, Duke.
Alright, back to it. I don't have to explain what red barrels do in video games, but green barrels are a bit different. It's pretty obvious that you shouldn't touch it and you shouldn't shoot them either, as shooting them releases these little green blobs that'll chase the player until destroyed. After a while of keycard hunting, we gain access to the library. You know, you'd think these aliens would be ravaging this place, but they're not. It just looks like they're on a field trip. After gaining access to the central hall, we find Mental's general. This is Major Stinger, the one and only adult arachnoid in this game. Now, he's got a few more tricks than your average arachnoid. While he still sports the classic machine gun in one hand, he also has a homing plasma gun in the other, as well as being able to deploy a shield when he's taken enough damage. There's no breaking the shield, so it's best to just wait it out. In the meantime, he'll call an airdrop of orc gunners. The airdrop system will be a recurring element in each level from now on. Despite all of that, Major Stinger eventually does go down like all the rest, and we escape to the harbor. And we've wrecked. Sam could write his own Odyssey. Specifically, we've wrecked in what would become modern-day Turkey. There's an enemy base nearby, so Natrixa suggests hijacking a plane to fly to Greece instead. We've lost all our weapons, but we can find a sledgehammer nearby. Say hi to our newest enemy, the infected tortoise. After coming into contact with a mutagenic ooze that is used by the orcs, these tortoises grew in size and developed projectile spikes on their shells that can hurt the player. Don't tell PETA about this, they'll probably try and put it down themselves. Though they're not the only new life forms mutated by the ooze, as carnivorous plants also have come into contact with it, turning into infected plants. They're stationary and can only use thorns that jut out from the ground to harm the player. They're not that big of a threat, and if you stay away from them, they'll generally leave you alone. After collecting our pistols, we get our first new weapon, the eraser gun. Though the type is more commonly considered as a railgun, and as a railgun it can tear through multiple opponents in a single shot. Ammo early on is scarce, so try and use it against lined up enemies instead of individually standing ones. Not too much later, we get another new weapon, the Slicer, the name being a reference to the Ripper from the Quake series. Though Serious Sam 2 had a similar weapon in its beta stage, the chainsaw used to fire blades in its early development, so it's possible there may have been some inspiration from that. The special effect of these blades is that they ricochet, though most areas are too open to be effective in that aspect. There really isn't too much else to add about this part, so we continue on to the exit. Wherever in Turkey we landed, it was apparently pretty close to Troy. Even closer though is an orc aircraft, so Natrixa suggests using it to get to Greece. The problem is it's missing a few pieces, so we head off on a scavenger hunt. But that doesn't look like one of the missing pieces. And that's because it isn't. It's a part of a document that gives half the coordinates to a secret island that holds the source of the orcs' dropship capabilities. If we find the other half, we unlock a secret level, something not seen since the first encounter. Anyway, as expected, we have to go on a bit of a keycard hunt. However, like last time, the last keycard is held by an elite enemy. This guy is known as the Fatty Swallower. That's kinda nasty. He's a giant form of the Scrapjack, not unlike Raloom from the 3BFE DLC. Unlike the first boss, this guy's a bit simpler. He's really just a shoot it till it dies type of boss. And despite having 2 cannons on his arm, he can only shoot saw blades from them and vomit up smaller minions.
Dissected!
Good riddance. Let's get out of here. Alright, okay, this level is pretty difficult. There's a shield surrounding a communications array that we need to disable and then finally destroy the array itself. It's pretty simple and short, but there's 2 interesting things to find in this level. First is the new obsidian Kamikaze. Alongside simply exploding, they also do lingering burning damage. The second is by placing this disruptor, a device from the Talos Principle, you can open a secret room that holds the Serious Sam 2 auto shotgun, also known as the Shell Cycler. And it really lives up to the name. I mean, just look at the comparison. This is my favorite weapon in the game, right next to this one, the Shaft. It's got limited range, but it functions like a Ghostbuster. Eventually, we do power down the shields and destroy the array. Oh, and something else I forgot, you can skip this mission completely. Once you touch down, you can literally just 180 and hop right back into the aircraft. Either way, this was a short but very difficult mission. Finally, we've made it to Greece. The Cradle of Democracy doesn't have a lot of interesting things about it, it's just another keycard hunt. And who else would have the final keycard other than another boss? This is Tetrachoke the Wizard. Once a regular Reptiloid, Mental took a liking to him and gifted him with powers that put him on par with his Highlander and Highlander's bride's relatives. Obviously, he has the homing fireballs, but he also has a 360 fireball attack. The wizard part from his name comes from the fact that he can use telekinesis, specifically using the tiles around the boss room as projectiles. But in the end, he's just another lizard wizard.
I made it!
We are on the moon. According to Natrixa, this moon base is made to assist Mental's troops in deploying forces on Earth using portal technology. Like every level before it though, it remains a keycard hunt. How many times do I have to say this? The moon base has a few new gimmicks though, one of the first you'll see being the Orc Scientists. They serve as the human being equivalent from the other maps, meaning they just run away from you. Inside these test tubes you can also find mutated Gnar, and in a surprise twist, they attack everyone. The map also contains the last weapon you can collect in the game.
Lighter saber! I think sci-fi, but apparently it's fantasy.
Gotta avoid that copyright somehow. The general gist is to collect these 4 keycards around the map and bring them to the power source of all portals so we can deactivate them before leaving to the final map. But before we do that, there's some cool little things I'd like to talk about, like how you can find deactivated portals with references to the series Stargate, as well as the facility being owned by the Mental Altani Corporation, being a reference to the Weyland Yutani Corporation from Aliens. Max capacity, 3 mechs. Freaking fat ass. We're finally here, the final level. The premise is quite simple. We need to chase this guy. This is Director Doppler, the head of risk and assessment for Mental Altani. Very random, I know. After a little time, you track him down to the base's launch command room, which holds a bunch of weapons of mass destruction pointed at Earth. Doppler then drops 2 mechs into the arena, Tech X and Prime 209. The best strategy is to take down Tech X first as he's the weaker of the two. After destroying both mechs, Doppler activates the base's self-destruct before having a final standoff with Sam. After getting him down to around 10% health, the director teleports away, leaving us to escape the moon base in a spaceship. It's unknown what happened to the director in the end, but it really doesn't matter, as Sam heads back to Earth, continuing with the rest of the first encounter. Bogus Detour is definitely up there with the better Sam indie titles and is personally one of my top 3. It was definitely a joy to play through again, and I would highly recommend it if you want more Sam. But with that being said, there's only 2 games left to cover, so without further ado, let's hop into the next one. I hate running backwards. For the few of you that don't know, is a secret voice line said by Sam during the Courtyards of Gilgamesh map in the second encounter.
I hate running backwards!
16 years after the release of the second encounter, this voice line would become the title of its own game. Developed by Binks Interactive and published by Devolver Digital as the first game published as part of the Crow Team Incubator program, I Hate Running Backwards is a shoot-'em-up using many Serious Sam assets. While the main protagonist is still Sam, he's accompanied by a bunch of Devolver Digital's other characters like the Bullet from Enter the Gungeon, Lo Wang from Shadow Warrior, and Jacket from Hotline Miami. Initially starting development as an unknown driving game, I Hate Running Backwards was refitted into the Serious Sam universe after Binks Interactive went to a conference in 2016, where they ran across Crow Team's composer, Damian. They showed off the driving game and he suggested a few changes. 3 days later, they delivered on those changes. This quick turnaround apparently left a mark on Crow Team as Binks began having regular communications with them. And after about a month, Crow Team approached them and asked them if they wanted to turn their driving game into a Serious Sam title. First called Serious Sam I Hate Running Backwards, and then simply renamed to I Hate Running Backwards. Outside of the standard indie promotions, I Hate Running Backwards has its own website to hype up the game known as Serious News Network, with a webpage called Moms Against Running Backwards, and it looks just like those stupid spam sites. The webpage is full of tales of parents' kids getting hurt doing weird things while running backwards and other fun stories. In May of 2018, the game released to mixed reviews, scoring a 71 on PC but in the low 60s on consoles. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Critics praised the style and gameplay but canned its repetitive nature, but at this point, critics are like the least qualified people to be judging anything. Like, if you want to see a movie and go on Rotten Tomatoes, you don't check the critic score, you check the audience score. I put critics just like an inch below video game journalists on the hate scale at this point. Anyway, side tangent over. Let's see if any of the hate is warranted and jump into I Hate Running Backwards. Just to get it out of the way, I Hate Running Backwards fits absolutely nowhere in the continuity, for reasons you'll see soon. This first area is the hub. To start your run, all you need to do is hop into this portal, but let's take a quick look around first. These trophies that you see lined up are the mutators that you can unlock after defeating a boss for every stage. These can be activated at the start of your run for an increased score multiplier. Higher scores mean more rewards. You can also find the weapons locker. To interact with them, simply press the melee key, which has Sam slinging his sledgehammer around. There's also a baby mode, which adds an extra heart to Sam, but it also gives him that iconic Serious Sam 2 tourist mode look. Anyway, let's hop into the portal. I Hate Running Backwards is split up into a few chapters. The first one is A King's Tale, which takes place in Egypt. Environments are highly destructible and drop these golden nuggets. These are called mojo. Whenever you collect enough, you can unlock one of 3 randomly chosen perks. This creates a loop of you fending off Mental's horde as well as destroying the environment for mojo. Every character also has a special ability. For Sam, it's using a serious bomb. These abilities are charged by killing enemies. On repeat playthroughs, you may notice that the areas don't all look the same. That's because they're all procedurally generated. I've done runs where I haven't encountered a single vehicle section, or runs where it's one of the first things I do. After enough fighting, the first boss reveals himself, the King Scorpion, not to be confused with the 2002 Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson box office failure, the Scorpion King. The King sports 2 machine guns unlike the standard Arachnoid and simply strafes left and right. The best thing to do is to remain central and unload all your weapons into him. After a few strafes, he'll hop underground and try to sting you with his tail while some Antarean spiders come after you. Just keep moving and shooting and he'll go down in no time. Between each boss is a little rest area. You'll see these shortcuts here open up to the next stage once you've beaten the current stage's boss if you want to skip ahead. The next stage takes place in the jungle, but from the architecture it seems to be Mesoamerican. There's a few new opponents you'll encounter here for the first time. There's Ulgump, a goblin who fires a slow-moving energy projectile, Mumbo Jumbo, a shaman who powers up himself and all surrounding aliens, the Bloater who works like the Belchers from Serious Sam 4, and the Knights who will try to push you off edges with their shield. The Mesoamerica chapter follows the same premise as the prior one, with the only change being the boss, and this time it's a scrapjack. You're probably starting to see a pattern of standard enemies becoming bosses. The next chapter is named Multi-Python and is modeled after a medieval town, likely a nod to the final episode of the second encounter, further supported by the final boss arena being set in a dark castle similar to the Citadel. Introduced in this chapter is the Werebull, who will target the player and strafe across the screen. If he hits you, it's an automatic game over, but you can temporarily take him out of the fight by killing him. The final boss of this chapter is the Lava Golem. Other than avoiding his magma rocks, you can slow him down and weaken him by firing these ice cannons at him that are scattered across the arena. The next chapter is Deep Space Mine, and finally introduces the Gnar. They function the same as they do in the main games, just a little tankier. There's also the Biomech Miners who also function like they do in the main titles. The boss for this arena is a Biomech Major who now shoots energy balls that cover the arena like it's a bullet hell game, and he can also shield himself, but if you use your special weapons like the laser beam on him, he'll go down pretty easy. The penultimate map is known as Specific Rim. Where exactly it takes place is unknown, but it shares some architectural similarities to either Greece or Rome. Eventually we make it to an elevator with 2 choppers on a platform. Hopping in one of them reveals the penultimate boss, Ugzan, but he's a little different this time. Natrix's file on him states that this is a version of Ugzan sent from the future after Mental put him back together using some parts of Hugo, the robot boss from Serious Sam 2. He's quite the challenge, as it's pretty easy to get clipped by some of his attacks. Firing at him normally won't work, as you can only damage him once his arms start to glow. Issue is that they only glow when he's using them for an attack, so you have to risk getting hit to take him down. After a while, you eventually do, but like in the first encounter, it's not the last we've seen of him, because he comes back for a round 2 as the Ugzan tank. I ain't dealing with that shit. After you take him out, you can enter this portal to begin your second loop. Kinda like a New Game Plus, and that's the entire gist of I Hate Running Backwards. All in all, I think I Hate Running Backwards is a pretty good indie title. The repetition isn't too bad since you're literally always progressing, and the constant stream of unlocks and new characters to use keeps things pretty fresh, as well as the procedural generation helping things from getting stale. Despite everything I just said though, I'd put this below Bogus Detour, for the simple reason of Bogus Detour simply having more to offer as a complete game, as where I Hate Running Backwards is more of a game I'd pick up for maybe an hour and then I go play something else. But regardless, I'd put it at 3rd place right under Bogus Detour, leaving us with the final Serious Sam indie game ever created. 1 year after the release of I Hate Running Backwards, a new indie title was released in early access, Serious Sam Tormental. Developed by Gungrounds, is a twin-stick roguelite shooter that initially started out as a game named Spitfire Inferno, taking a lot of inspiration from another game known as Geometry Wars. Gungrounds showed off this concept at a lot of conferences, and not too long after became part of Crow Team's incubator program, from where the title was changed from Spitfire Inferno to Tormental, and then finally Serious Sam Tormental, remaining in early access until April of 2022 when it was fully released, though support post-launch only lasted for about a month. Whether or not this was on the developer side or due to the incubator program shutting down at some point is unknown. However, the game can be considered to be in its complete state. The plot of Tormental goes as follows. Sam lands in Egypt in search of an ancient artifact known as the Mental Opticon, which can be used to stop Mental. After fighting through some aliens, he finds the pyramid with the artifact, and after doing battle with it, it seems to snatch Sam's consciousness from his body, leaving his real body unconscious on the pyramid floor. Or some other interpretations are that the real Sam is still moving around and only part of Sam is in Mental's mind. Yeah, the Mental Opticon is actually a gateway into Mental's mind, leaving Sam to wreak havoc inside of it. Gameplay-wise, and I hate to say it again because I say it so much, it's like Enter the Gungeon, a bullet hell game with a dodge roll mechanic. We start in Mental's frontal lobe, where we can find a myriad of characters that'll help Sam in his quest, as well as some more playable characters like Natrixa and Ugzan Jr. Entering into Mental's mind space, we dodge traps, enemies, find keys and chests with more loot, different weapons, or upgrades for our standard weapons. There are shopkeepers here that'll sell us perks for the in-game currency known as Figment, which is obtained by killing enemies or destroying the environment. Eventually, you'll reach a boss room. The first boss of the first mind space are the Deja Bulls, werebulls with increased health that are assisted by Kamikaze. Leading them into Kamikaze explosions is the best way to deal with them.
Moo to you too.
The second mind space is called the Sea of Thoughts. It's a sewer system.
Can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
The gameplay loop from here on is the same. I'd go into all the new enemies, however there's simply too many of them and this video is way too long as it is. The boss for this mind space is the Brainstorm, a schema that can manipulate other schemas into becoming an extension of itself, basically becoming a massive turret. You have to maneuver through to hit the central Brainstorm, as hitting its extensions won't do any damage to him. Before I move on, shout out to Damian again because the OST for this game is just goated. third mind space is called the Nightmare Caves. Similar gameplay loop, though this round introduces spectral enemies that can only be killed if all physical enemies are destroyed or by using explosives on them. The final boss in this arena is the Arachnithid Matriarch, but like most problems, shooting it makes it go away. The fourth mind space is Mount Fury. Something cool that I found out is that every stage is a different aspect of Mental. Like Mount Fury is the manifestation of his rage. The mission here is to defeat the Annihilodon. He doesn't represent any before seen Serious Sam enemy and takes the appearance of a fat-ass fire-breathing bird. But like that dove in that one baseball game, the fifth and penultimate mind space is the Fortress. Again, it has the same gameplay loop as the rest of the maps, but it has a familiar final boss. Mental Institution from Serious Sam 2. This truly is the Elden Ring Night Reign of Serious Sam. After you beat him, you enter the Vault. Throughout the game, you may have completed some random objectives. For every objective you complete, you gain a mental key. If you collect all of them, the Cerebral Gateway opens up. You can also speak to the representation of Mental above this gateway and get more insight on his side of things. Before we head through and finish this, there's something I should mention. When the game was still in early access, there was a secret final level known as Long Beach Island. It could only be accessed by playing the game on tourist difficulty. Sam will spawn on this beach and start walking, but you may notice that you're being stalked. This thing stalking you is called the Deep Sleep State Subroutine, an extremely powerful system meant to stop any harm from coming to Mental, kind of like a firewall or an antibody. Though he is killable, he has so much health that the only feasible way to kill him would be to hack the game. As far as I'm aware, this location is no longer in the game, being removed after the full release. The final mindscape after entering the gateway puts us up against the Mental Thought, the manifestation of all of his ideas. The idea would be to put down the Mental Thought and distract Mental long enough to give the real Sam, who's currently busy in the latter half of 3BFE, enough time to get to the time lock. The Mental Thought is a pretty tough fight, but we get a cannon, so we deal with it pretty easily. After you beat it, Mental has a nice chat with Sam about why he is, and they get really close to having an understanding of each other. But in the end, Sam suggests that they stay enemies. And while the mainline Sam is headed to the time lock and continues to fight Mental in the past, Tormental Sam will continue to fight Mental in his mind space, finally sending us off to the credits. If it wasn't clear by my earlier top 3 ranking, I put Tormental at the top of my list. And I know that may seem a little illogical because of how I treated I Hate Running Backwards compared to Bogus Detour, but there's something golden in Tormental. The gameplay loop, the music, the boss fights, challenges, lore. Even though it's a non-canonical experience of Sam, the implication of his 3BFE self not being able to make it to the time lock without the help of his Tormental counterpart still carries some weight. And any game that integrates itself into the lore so well is pretty good in my book, and it puts it as my number 1 Serious Sam indie game. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know what time it is. It's Christmas time. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody. This video has been a long time coming, like you heard at the very start of the video. I was very stupid and I didn't bring all the stuff I needed to make videos. But regardless of that, I hope you're spending time with anybody, maybe a loved one, maybe your family during this Christmas. Go do something, right? Go outside if you're not doing anything. Me personally, I'm gonna be probably working on a video. Actually, no, I just finished this one, so I'm gonna go play old school RuneScape and have some fun because I almost finished Recipe for Disaster. I think I just need to finish Desert Treasure 1 and then I can finally get that out of my mind. I've been like, that's where my mind's been at for like the past week and a half-ish. Just questing and questing and questing. Regardless, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your patience. I really, really appreciate it because there's some of you that are, I mean, you've probably seen the pattern at this point. You're basically getting like 1 or 2 videos a year from me. So again, I very, very much appreciate you guys waiting for me. Oh, that's what it was. I wanted to give a little shout out to a friend of mine. His YouTube is Just Tyler. I'll make sure to put a link in the description. We play together pretty often. He's been a really good friend of mine for a long time. We've been through a lot together, so it would be great if you could go check him out. And with that being said, Merry Christmas. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. My girlfriend requested that I do this, so you can blame her.
A new hand touches the beacon.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!